It's so tricky, and I think it's going to be so kind of dependent for each person. And I would never kind of mock somebody for fearing getting bulky. I would say it's really hard to achieve a significant amount of muscle gain. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. It's a process. If you are concerned about gaining too much muscle, remember, building strength doesn't necessarily mean you have to build a significant amount of muscle. You can strengthen any muscle that you have, improve those neuromuscular connections, improve that neuromuscular efficiency, make your life feel easier. But if you are worried about getting bigger, I would encourage you to kind of sit with, why is that? Why is it that this is something that is holding me back?
Hello, Elizabeth.
Lauren, thank you for having me.
So happy to have this conversation. I heard from so many people over the last week being like, I love Elizabeth.
Yay.
So we're going to dive. Well, it's so true. You run an amazingly empowering account, which is why we're having this conversation. I feel like your account is so empowering, but it's also very practical. I mean, you have very practical tips. You are a big proponent for strength training for females.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's talk about that. And then I want to dip into your personal story a bit too, because I do think it's interesting, but I feel like let's start with just some really concrete information. So people are asking, what's your Instagram account? It's This Woman Lifts. Such a great account. And your background is something we were going to talk about in a few minutes. But if we were to start with really nuts and bolts, ABC 101, what do we mean when we talk about strength training for women? What does that even mean, strength training?
Yeah, it's a phrase we hear a lot, isn't it? And it's great that strength training is now getting so much attention. But I certainly think there can be some confusion around what it is. So when we talk about strength, we are talking about the ability of a muscle or a group of muscles to produce force against an external resistance. So sure, when you see someone picking up a barbell or doing a push-up, they are expressing strength. But when you lift up a heavy parcel that has been delivered, or you get out of a chair, that is an expression of strength as well. And a key factor in building strength is actually neuromuscular. So the communication between the brain and the muscles. And I think this is really, really important. If there's one thing I want people to take away from our chat, it's this, that when we talk about building strength, what we're really doing, it's brain training in a way. We are trying to develop really strong channels of communication between our brain and our muscles, because the better those channels of communication, the more able we are to activate and coordinate our muscle fibers efficiently and express our strength. So strength is not all about being muscly, although being muscly may help us to develop more strength. A muscle of any size can be strength trained. We can improve those neuromuscular connections. We can improve that neuromuscular efficiency. And this is why strength training requires repetition, okay? Because in order to develop that neuromuscular coordination and efficiency, we need to practice again and again, and we need to apply progressive overload to gradually increase the challenge over time and to continue to encourage our bodies to adapt.
Yeah, that's great. And I always describe to clients of mine when I try to explain the neuro side of it, I'm like, imagine you have a switchboard, and in order for your house to run really well and for you to have the tea kettle work, but the AC is on and you can also take a bath with hot water, you need all of those circuits to be on. And the more circuits on, the more better. And I think that people assume that the brain is always just doing its job, and so are our muscles. I think people don't know that the brain cuts off circuits. Like, use it or lose it is really real.
It really is. I love that analogy, Lauren. I'm going to pinch it.
Yeah. Yes, do steal it. And so I'm pretty sure I didn't make it up, but like, we've got this switchboard and we want to make sure all the switches are on. And strength training, like you were saying, is one of the best ways, right? To kind of turn all the switches on.
Absolutely. And yeah, use it or lose it is true. So if we are not innovating those motor units, if we're not using those muscle fibers, then the body doesn't see that as an important thing for us to need to be able to do. But the flip side of that then is really, really exciting, isn't it? Because if we start to increase that innovation, then the body gets the message, okay, I need to be able to do this. And so we can increase our capacity. The body is so amazingly adaptable, and it's such an exciting thing that you can experience through strength training.
I mean, I think people really think I'm too old for this. And I'm like, I have people in their late 60s starting with my programming who see massive changes to their body. And they're like, I was under this impression that once I turned 50, I was just like too late, too old for it all. Yeah. That's not true. Right?
It's not true at all. And there is an overwhelming amount of research to show us that at any age, even into our 80s, we have the potential to adapt given the appropriate stimulus. And certainly when I hear people say in their 30s, 40s, 50s, oh, is it too late? It absolutely isn't. I mean, start as soon as you're able. Yes. I would love everybody to be starting in their 20s, 30s, because let's be honest, it is easier to build muscle at that time of our lives. But that is not to say that it is ever too late. And in fact, because we're talking about these neuromuscular adaptations, it's often very, very exciting for somebody who starts because they get so much early progress. So absolutely, whatever your starting point, whatever your age, you have so many kind of exciting adaptations to tap into.
Yeah. And I would love for you to hone in specifically on like, why is strength so important for women? Why is it like so protective for us? And what are we vulnerable to? Like, why strength training?
Yeah. Okay. So men and women are both going to start losing strength and muscle mass as part of the aging process. And that typically starts in our 30s or our 40s. So, this is young.
And it's not an insignificant amount of muscle loss that women lose per decade after the age of 30. I think it's 8% per decade.
It's significant amount, and we know that the menopause transition exacerbates this. So this is a factor that is very, very impactful. So perimenopause, normally something we're going to navigate in our 40s. We start to see a decline in our most potent form of estrogen, which is called estradiol. Let's call it E2 because it's less of a mouthful. E2 is an anabolic hormone, which is just a fancy word to say that it builds tissue. It is a really helpful hormone for helping us to build muscle. And it's also really important as a hormone for helping us to generate strong, powerful muscle contractions as well. So we start to see a decline in that during perimenopause, and this E2 estrogen eventually flatlines. Average age of menopause for Caucasian women is 51. And that's a year since your final period, since your last period. And so we find ourselves less able to build muscle. And we find ourselves in that age-related cycle of decline of masculine strength as well. So it's a potent combination.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we can bank before we go into that, certainly the better. That said, like you already touched on, it's never too late to start. And if you apply the principles for, achieving those strength gains and building muscle, your body will adapt.
Absolutely. And I mean, but I feel like people equate strength training and muscle training with becoming an Olympian, like getting, like I don't have a desire to look bulky. I mean, I still feel like women, and this is why I love your account so much, is because you really debunk, you're so serious about not playing into society's demands of what women should look like, right? And that you like, and the realities of like running a life, right? But I feel like women are still stuck in this mindset, like this idea that like if a woman walks into the gym, she's sent over to the cardio machines. And if a man walks into the gym, he's sent over into the weight room. And I still feel like women think that like cardio is the way that what they need to be doing to stay small and thin and healthy and fit. And they as if think that they're going to as if get bulky from strength training, which there's nothing wrong with being bulky, but like the majority of females that I know who do strength training do not look bulky, but they can lift really heavy things. So can you talk about that a little bit also? Because there's so much myth about strength training.
Yes.
And
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a lot there, isn't there? And I agree with you. I think one of the reasons is that the cardio section just feels a little bit less intimidating, doesn't it? It feels like you can hop on a machine, set your timer. But I know from personal experience, there was definitely a period in my life where it was about going on a cardio machine and I would watch that calorie monitor and I would stay on that machine until I felt that I had burnt an appropriate amount of calories. It was very much this exercise is a means to burn calories. And it's such a limiting mindset. Because, cardio is super important. The statistics around heart disease in postmenopausal women are also quite staggering. So yeah, we do want to be doing cardio. But I like to think of exercise as a way of nurturing my future self, and I call that my old lady body. So what can I do now to serve her? And I see, cardio is a part of that. I want her to have a strong, healthy heart. I want her to be able to go for the long walks that I know she is going to enjoy because they're such an important part of my life. Be able to kind of have that functional independence, which is so easy to take for granted, but you only really need to look at older relatives to see that it is precious. How many of us have seen an older relative, and I'm not even saying elderly here, an older relative struggle to get out off the sofa. I think we take our bodies for granted, but I think it's fair to say, knowing what we know about the aging process and that decline in strength and muscle function, things that we are finding challenging in our 40s are not going to miraculously feel easier in our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, unless we do something to mitigate it, right? Yeah. Certainly things that are feeling hard already in our 40s are going to feel inaccessible unless we do something to mitigate it. I used to joke about my lack of strength. In my 20s, I had really skinny arms, skeletal arms, and lacked upper body strength. And I used to joke about it. I used to think, like, this is funny. I can't lift that thing. I can't carry that thing. And I'm grateful that I did start strength training when I did, because I didn't have a lot of muscle mass there to lose, So when I hear this concern about getting bulky, do you ever really see a 70-year-old, 80-year-old woman who is over-muscled? Is that
No.
a common thing? No.
Never. You see them looking frail. You see a lot of really frail looking people, which is so unfortunate. Yeah. The bulky thing is such a myth.
It's a myth, but it's such a loaded thing. So when I see this discussed, and it's discussed a lot on social media, the response is usually, it takes a lot of effort to get bulky. It takes conscious training, fueling. It's not something that happens by accident. And I completely agree with that. But I want to strip the conversation back a layer. And I am interested to know, when a woman does express a concern about getting bulky, I want to know, well, what does bulky mean to you?
It's like eating disorder mindset 101. It's really, it's body dysmorphia 101. Because if you are, you know, again, moving like regularly, and then strength training, they say you only need like 2 or 3 times a week. We're not talking 7 days a week, 2 times a week. Really,
The
like
World Health Organization says 2 times a week, muscle strengthening activities to target all the main muscles.
Yeah,
all 2 times a week.
Yeah, every trainer, every personal trainer I talk to says the same thing. You know, but I think that like if you you're not going to get, who's getting bulky? And yes, what does this even mean, bulky?
Yeah.
What does that even mean? We're so afraid of
Getting any bigger.
getting any bigger.
Any bigger.
Yeah.
Because I suspect that when a lot of people express this concern about getting bulky, they're not imagining bulky as, really, really muscled. They're thinking, I don't want to get any bigger. I don't want that extra centimeter circumference on my thighs. I don't want to be any bigger.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a product of a lot of messaging that we have been fed through the 90s, the noughties. This is very much for people who are sort of a similar age to us.
Yeah.
We have had really detrimental messaging that kind of makes us fear getting any bigger, even if that comes with a lower risk of all-cause mortality. Don't want it. Because it's scary. Life is going to feel better. Life is going to feel easier. We're going to feel more confident in our ability to go out there and do the things we need to do. We're still frightened of this extra centimeter on our thighs.
It's crazy how we would prioritize being smaller over being healthier, over being stronger, over protecting our brain, our heart. Like, we're talking every system. Strength is protective to every system in our body. Yeah. And we do all these things to live longer. We eat all these like vitamins and take all these red light therapies and then all this cold plunging, but like one of the easiest it's free. Strength training is really actually free.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be, but for the most part, getting stronger in your body is free and protective. And yet people are terrified of, because in order to really build strength, you actually have to start eating a bit more, right? Like than most people are used to, a little bit more. Like most people are not eating. I mean, most women are just trying many. So I think that also people don't realize that strength training does burn, for those people like wanting to get on a cardio machine to burn calories. When you were talking about your experience, I was like, wait, but strength training is one of the best calorie burners we have. Not that that's what I'm promoting with strength training, but for people who care about that, they should know that.
Yeah.
That it burns calories.
Yeah, a lot. If you change your body composition and build some muscle, muscle is metabolically active.
Very.
So
it's the most metabolic active tissue in our body.
So it's so tricky, and I think it's going to be so kind of dependent for each person. And I would never kind of mock somebody for fearing getting bulky. I would say it's really hard to achieve a significant amount of muscle gain. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. It's a process. If you are concerned about gaining too much muscle, remember, building strength doesn't necessarily mean you have to build a significant amount of muscle. You can strengthen any muscle that you have, improve those neuromuscular connections, improve that neuromuscular efficiency, make your life feel easier. But if you are worried about getting bigger, I would encourage you to kind of sit with, why is that? Why is it that this is something that is holding me back?
You struggled with this yourself, right? I mean, this is an area that you have struggled with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had an eating disorder in my teens, which I then kind of relapsed into in my early 20s. And then throughout my 20s, I was very cardio focused, even though I had kind of, I would say, healed from my eating disorder. I wasn't starving myself. I was still kind of, I had rules in place around food, right? But I was functioning in my career and my life. I was in a different job then. I was very cardio focused. I was very much using exercise as a way of burning calories. I would feel edgy, agitated if I hadn't exercised. So there was still some kind of untouchy patterns there. Yeah, absolutely. And then I would say kind of by my late 20s, early 30s, I was in a much better, more settled place. I started strength training when my second baby was about 2. I had a career change. I was a lawyer. I decided to leave law and become a fitness coach. And as part of that, I started doing structured progressive resistance training. And definitely I had this concern that my body was going to change. It was almost like a feeling of loss of control, which I think is something very familiar amongst people who have had an eating disorder, this loss of control over my body. Have I gained a significant amount of muscle? No, all these years on, now I really want to build muscle and I'm like, come on, why is this taking so freaking long?
But you said you can like deadlift twice your body weight and you can do pull-ups. I mean, that is significant.
I am the person who used to joke about my lack of strength.
Yeah.
I am not from a sporty background. I had not lifted weights through university. I was a cardio person, running spin classes, all great, by the way. Running spin classes, brilliant. We want to keep our hearts healthy and strong. This was not my playground. Going into a gym, putting plates on a barbell, this was not, the first time I was doing it, I didn't even know how to do it. How do you even get a plate on it was really out of my comfort zone. The idea that I would ever be able to do one pull-up was just something I thought, and this is why I'm so passionate, because actually, if you can decide what do you want to get stronger in? Because strength is skill specific. What do you want to be stronger in? Do you want to do a deadlift? Do you want to do a squat? Do you want to do a pull-up? Do you want to do a push-up? There's no right or wrong. We want to try and get a balanced program, but there's so many options available to you in terms of building your strength. If you are then consistent and you apply progressive overload, your body adapts. And I appreciate being consistent is a whole other thing, isn't it? Because when we've got careers and family life and we're being pulled in a million directions, of course it's hard. But if you can accept that you're going to get interrupted and come back to it as soon as you can, don't chuck the whole thing away. Come back to it when you can and continue on your way. Your body adapts, and that is so empowering, Lauren.
Totally.
To know that I can do things that I thought I would never, ever be able to do.
Totally.
That is something that stays with you. When you have those doubts in yourself and you think, I could never do that, you kind of find yourself saying, do you know what? Maybe if I just break it down into small steps, maybe I can do that. It's amazing, not just for body, but for mind as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. I have to say that I had to get my daughter her driver's license, and we stood in this line for literally 4 hours. We were in Miami. It was hot. We were not in an AC building. We were standing outside. People were just sitting on the ground. There was nowhere to sit. People were just sitting outside on this pavement, literally 4 hours of this. And my daughter went to go sit on a bench. I was like, don't worry, I got you. She's like 16. She should have been standing in line and I should have been sitting on the bench. But I was like, no, I got you. Go sit down if you want. I'll stand here. And I stood for those 4 hours and I kept thinking, like, I wanted to moan about it and complain and be like, everything hurts. But the reality was like, nothing really hurts. Like, I could do it. And it was this simple task of like, I could just stand for 4 hours waiting for this license, right? And my husband called me and I was like, and I'm so annoyed. And I wanted to be like, and everything hurts. But I was like, but nothing really hurts. Like, I'm okay. You know what I did? I would drop down into a squat and but I didn't have this need to offload. And I remember I used to walk around a museum and have to be that person that would like need to sit every 5 minutes and be like, oh, everything hurts. You know, so it is empowering. Like you said, it's like, and I think there's a bunch of people asking like, how do I start and where do I start? And you know, that we're not going to definitely get into we're not getting into specifics in this conversation, but like, I think that starting doesn't look like picking up a barbell with 2 plates on it and starting to do 35 squats either. And I think people, right. Like starting can be learning to manage your own body weight. Like, right. Like, I just think people get intimidated by how do I start?
Yeah.
And I think, again, because there's this idea that I need to go look like an Olympian in a gym with all these weights and something heavy and I need to throw it around and I'm afraid I'm going to get injured. You won't get injured if you follow a really structured path of like, you will get injured. I mean, I don't know why you'll get injured, but you could get injured by doing something really overloaded if you haven't progressed there.
That's it. If your tissues aren't prepared to meet that level of demand, if we exceed what the tissues can currently handle, I think that's it. So it can be really confusing, can't it? I think I always want people to start at a level that actually feels a little bit too easy, because what I see all too often is people are keen. They've taken that decision to start, and so they go a little bit too hard. And what can be really demotivating is then ending up with a bit of a niggle, not feeling great, and
then you blame, right?
And you lose confidence. You lose confidence in your body, you lose confidence in that method of training. So let's take a squat, for example. So we've got a knee dominant movement, really functional. I would say pick a rep range. Okay, so for someone who's beginning, 10 to 15 reps. Okay, that's just a moderate rep range. And you're going to do 3 sets of squats and you're going to rest 90 seconds between each set. And what you're looking to do is start with body weight, and just check in, how are those squats feeling? What depth can you reach consistently from rep to rep? We want to standardize our reps. We want our reps looking the same in set 1 and in set 3. And it might be that in set 1 you do 14 reps, then you do set 2, you do 12 reps, set 3 you do 10 reps. The next week, you're going to come back to your squats and you're going to do them again and see if you can add 1 rep in each of those sets, as long as you're keeping your movement consistent. The next week, you're going to do the same. When you're doing 3 sets of 15 and your reps are all looking consistent, you're comfortable, you're going to think, okay, I'm going to get a small weight or a household item that's not too heavy. I'm going to hold it at my chest, and now I'm increasing the resistance. And
even if it feels too light, you're just sticking with that.
You're just going to do it, okay? And it might be that you do all sets, 15 reps with that light household object. Afterwards, you check in. The next day, you check in. Everything's feeling good. Week 3, I'm going to get a slightly heavier object, and So this is not a quick process, and I always say we're playing the long game here.
Yes.
But what is the rush? It took me a year to get my first pull-up. What was the rush? There was no rush. It didn't matter. Could I have achieved it in 3 months? Maybe I could have, but actually it took me a year. And,
I think a lot of people also who follow both of us have specific injuries. I know a lot of people who follow me have a lot of pelvic floor and low back injuries. And I want to say that, again, strength training never needs to look like the end goal would be a pull-up, right? Either. Don't get intimidated by having to achieve certain... Strength training is graded to you and you only, and you're not trying to meet a template, you're trying to meet yourself. And like you said, Elizabeth, at the beginning of this conversation, you're trying to build your skills, add more skills to your repertoire, and have better balance and better neurological control and build muscle along the way. But people thinking oh, well, I'll never be able to do a pull-up, so I'm not going to strength train. Wait, I don't even do pull-ups. And I strength train every week, but I don't do pull-ups. So it doesn't make me less strong than Elizabeth. It's just not what it's not the skill I'm working on.
That's it. There is no movement that you have to train. You do not need to train. I want to see you doing something knee dominant. Does that have to be a squat? No, it doesn't. I want to see you doing something hip dominant. Does that have to be a barbell deadlift? Absolutely not. It could be a glute bridge. I'd like to see you doing a pull movement. Does that have to be a pull-up? Absolutely not.
That's right.
So much to choose from. So much. There will be a way of accessing this, whatever your starting point. If you can't do a squat, can you sit down to a chair and then stand up again?
That's right.
Great. Brilliant. Start with that.
That's right.
And then your progression might be, over time, you're going to start doing one of those sets without the chair there. So you've got to get a sense of going to your full depth and then standing back up. And then the next week you might do 2 sets without your chair. And the final week you're doing all 3 sets without your chair.
That's right.
That's right. So often on social media, we see these big, sexy PBs. Actually, I'm here for the kind of everyday wins, that aren't sexy or Instagrammable. The person who says, actually, I never used to be able to get off the floor without kind of straining or pulling myself up, and now I can get up off the floor without using my hands. That is incredible,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look at my mom, who's 75 or 76, and she is living her best life. She travels the world. She strength trains twice a week. She follows my, she does strength train, what I recommend. Yeah. Walking every day, strength training twice a week, mobility a few days a week, right? The really good recommendations for women. And she's living her best life. And she came over the other day, and we literally were sitting on my floor pillows on the floor, and she was just playing with my dog on the floor, like me in my 40s. And I thought, when I'm 76, I want to sit on the floor with my daughters and take trips all over the world. And it's just, this is what we're training for, right? Like you said, the old lady body, not necessarily, like you said, to be able to do 100 pounds of deadlifts. It's not about that. But we have to be doing strength training.
And it's tricky, isn't it? Because life is full, and we can kind of get into a pattern of thinking, I'll start when life calms down. When life calms down, then I'll carve out time for myself to do this. Right. The problem is, the way I see it, my life is not going to calm down really until my kids leave home and I am retired. But when my kids have left home and I'm retired, I want to be ready to go. I want to travel. I want to explore. I want to do all the things that in this season are just a little bit inaccessible to me. So it's about putting those deposits into kind of this old lady body pension that I call it, to reap the benefit, to reap the benefit when life calms down. Don't wait for life to calm down.
Such a good
Even if all you can do right now in your kind of busy, hectic season is some squats, some glute bridges, some push-ups.
Yeah, and not to fearmonger, but it is true that like they say that like Alzheimer's starts in your 30s, heart disease starts in your 30s, 40s. Like a lot of the like you get it in like later on, but and obviously I'm not blaming anybody for having heart disease or a stroke and all of that, but there's so much we can do that's heart and brain protective around lifestyle, habit, movement, and strength. Again, we're taking all these like supplements and vitamin D's and all of that, and that's all great, and doing all these like other ceremonial rituals. Strength training is free. Movement is free. And like you said, it is so empowering to then your kids move out and you're ready to go, as opposed to your kids move out and you collapse on the floor and now you're too tired and now you're too exhausted and now you don't know. You know, and it's hard. I get it. I have 3 children. I had 3 kids in 3 years. I know what. Yeah. I had 3 kids in 3 years. Yeah.
Gosh, I spread mine out over 6.5.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I was probably I wasn't thinking, but it's great now. My oldest is 18, so I've got one out the door, the next one out the door. Like my partner and I talk all the time about like the day after our youngest. In 4 years, she's leaving us. 3. We have 3 more years. Yeah. Let me tell you where I'm gonna be. Not on the floor, hopefully, but like you said, go, 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 go. See, do, jump. I want to wrap up our conversation, but I would love for you to just, if you have any nuggets, whether it's mindset, you know, I think a lot of people are afraid to start. From reading the comments a bit, I think a lot of people are just like terrified. They don't know how to start. They've had injuries. You yourself started later in life doing your strength training. Can we end our conversation with any sort of a encouraging nugget?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's never ever too late to start, and it doesn't have to be complicated. What I want you to think about is picking, if you've only got 1 day a week, I know Lauren and I said that it's twice a week, but if you can only do 1 day a week, that's better than not doing 7 days a week, right? So it doesn't have to be complicated. Pick even 3 movements: a squat, a glute bridge, and a push-up. Okay, those are your 3 movements. You're going to do those once a week for the next 6 weeks. You're going to keep a note of what you can do, and each week you're going to just make it a tiny bit harder. You're going to prioritize decent movement quality, which means you want each rep looking like the other one. Okay.
Meaning if 10 is too hard because by 10 you're collapsing, then
then don't do 10, right? Okay. Do what you can do with decent form. And then the next week, try if you can to do a little bit more. But if you can't do a bit more, that's all right. Because what I've found is there are weeks like that where just you're not able to progress on, and that's okay. Magic is happening that you cannot see. Come back to it the next week, hold on, try again. Don't change stuff up, okay? Stick with whatever movements you've decided on for at least 6 weeks. I would say 8. I would say 12. If the glute bridge gets too easy, switch to a single leg glute bridge. If the squat feels too easy, grab something and hold it. So you're doing a loaded squat. If the push-up on the floor is too hard, do it with your hands raised on the kitchen counter. Get creative. Think, how can I find an accessible level for me right now? And as your body adapts, which it will, how can I make this a little bit harder now? Because I want to trick my body so that it adapts even more, okay? And just see it as an opportunity, okay? If you're going into this with the mindset of, oh, I'm not doing this well enough, I'm not good enough at this, you know, you need to strength train, because you'll find that mindset, that limiting mindset is gonna go. You're gonna realize how capable you are, how adaptable you are, how resilient you are.
And all of that then feeds your life in so many ways, because when you feel that level of hope and you see how wonderful your body is. Like, I had back surgery 2 years ago. And so many people say to me, they're like, how are you doing the things you're doing? And it's like, do you know how empowering it is? First of all, I don't know what I'll be doing tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow I'll not be doing amazing, but it is empowering when the thing that you can be in control of. I can't be in control of the a-hole who like cut me off the road last night. I can't be in control of my daughter having like a fit this morning because I made the eggs the wrong way. I can't be, those things I don't control, but I can control me. This is the only thing I have right now. So why not like squeeze the lemon as much as I can with love and kindness and care so I can get the most out of this thing that I can control. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be complicated, right? It really doesn't
have to be complicated. We love to overcomplicate things, but actually the basics stay the same.
Yeah.
My program is mainly the basics. You go again and again and again, just constantly trying to make things that little bit more challenging.
Yeah. And when people are asking a little bit about group classes, I will say that if you go to group classes, so then you don't get to build the exact same skill every week, like Elizabeth is saying, it's still okay because most group strength classes there's not a lot of, like, there's a push, there's a pull, there's a hinge, there's like a squat, there's a lunge.
Yeah.
So if your strength training classes are giving you those, then it's up to you to also say, well, this week I used a 5-pound for the last 3 weeks. This week, I'm going to try an 8-pound. So you progressive overload in yourself, but make sure you take note. Don't say, this week I'm doing 5 pounds. This week I'm doing 8 pounds. This week I'm doing 2 pounds. Stick with 5 pounds for at least a few weeks. I think that and so you're in a group setting, you're following because I teach, my fitness platform is not in a gym. It's actually what I teach people is they're at home and the classes do change up and people are getting stronger that way because you don't need to do the way that, Elizabeth, you strength train in one way and I strength train like you. I do a mix. I do actually a mix stuff. I do like you and I do like what I teach in my platform. But I think people think again that strength training that works, oh, well, I don't want to go to a gym and do these 5 boring exercises. I love my class workouts. Go to your classes.
Go to your class.
Go to your
if
classes.
you enjoy it and if you enjoy it, that is brilliant because
and you're getting stronger.
The most important thing is adherence, right? You could have the best, most optimal way of doing something, but if someone doesn't do it, it's pointless. So if you love your group class, do, but like Lauren says, try to have some control. I remember when I was starting back at the gym after having my second baby, and I would do this circuits class, and sometimes, kettlebell swings were often in there. Sometimes the instructor would put an 8-kilogram kettlebell, sometimes a 12-kilogram, sometimes a 6-kilogram, and I'd rock up and I'd do my minute of swings with whatever. And then as I started career changing, I thought, hang on, this is mad. If I can do a 12 kilo, why am I doing a 6 kilo this week? So just take a little bit of ownership. Nobody's going to say, she went off and got a weight and brought it. The instructor will encourage that.
I used to go to a circus class too, and this guy would bring his little notebook. And for a while, I was like, wow, why is he so pedantic about it? Can't he just come and have fun? Now I totally get it. And I advise all my clients in my fitness classes, I'm like, know what weight you're using so you can change weights over time. But I remember at the beginning of my journey, I would look at him and be like, why do you have to take it so seriously? But you do, actually. That's how you grow.
Actually, if we are time poor and we are kind of overwhelmed, actually, I want to get the most bang for my buck from my sessions. So if that means logging, keeping a note of weights, keeping a note of something that felt trickier, keeping a note of how I perceived the effort level for that set, then that enables me to get a more efficient workout. The next week I can come in and hit the ground running. That is brilliant for me. I don't have time to be kind of doing
up and down and here and there and willy-nilly and not knowing what weight you're lifting.
Exactly.
I was training someone recently and I was like, so what is your ideal, what's your press weight? And they were like, and they had been going to circuits at a gym for years. And I was like, what do you mean you don't? Like, I got it. I understood because that was me for years.
Yes,
I was like,
yes,
okay,
same here.
your homework by the time we meet again in a few months. Yeah, you're going to tell me exactly what your ideal press weight is, right? Like next time we meet. Anyway, yeah, it's been amazing talking to you.
It's been so fun, Lauren.
Yay. And I think that I've just wanted to talk to you for such a while because I really love your approach. Not like people check out this account, your Elizabeth's account, because it is so empowering and the messaging is so wonderful. So thank you for having this conversation.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you.
To be continued.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that
too. Everybody take care and goodbye.